What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Okay, we're talking about Social Security today. I want to show you this article from Axios, and I want to talk a little bit about waste, fraud, and abuse. Where is the waste, fraud, and abuse? This is what we've been hearing a lot about, right? Doge is in there. They're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse, and they're uncovering all of this stuff when it comes to Social Security. I don't think they are. I really don't. And I'm going to show you some numbers because we do have some numbers. Now, understand these numbers were prior to Doge coming in. So we'll have to see if Doge has some different numbers, but they're not sharing that information with us. And I've stated this before, when it comes to Doge not giving us detailed information, and just an example of that, $150 billion saved so far when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse. That's what they have on their website, 150 or $160 billion. But guess what? When you look at, and they do have some of the areas where they're saving money, but when you look at the areas where they're saving money, it doesn't add up to 150 billion or 160 billion. It's not even close. And so where are they getting the numbers from? How are they making this 150 billion make sense? And the reason that this is important, it's important because Social Security right now, it's on the firing line. You have politicians that want to do away with Social Security or make deep cuts into Social Security. And so that's why we need to have this discussion, and that's why we need to call out the misinformation, because if you can get, some politicians are looking at this, if you can get people to believe that Social Security is going bankrupt, one, because you'll hear politicians say that. Social Security is not going bankrupt, but you'll hear politicians say that. Or if you can get them to believe, get the American people to believe that Social Security is broken, so we need to dismantle it and change it and privatize it or do something else with it, that is the way that you're going to destroy Social Security. Misinformation. And there's a lot of it out there. And so that's what we're going to talk about today on this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. And if you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so I found this interesting. There's an article, Axios put this article out. It says Social Security cuts phone service in bid to address fraud. And this was written on March 18th, so it's a little dated. Okay, so it's older information, but there is something that's important here. And so what they were talking about doing is cutting some of the phone services. So if you would call, you might have to wait a little bit longer. And so the plan back then, and this is the acting commissioner that was saying this, the plan was to cut some phone services. But I think they've changed that now. I haven't heard any talk about that lately. But I wanted to focus on this one area right here, because it says, by the numbers, Dudek said the agency sees about $100 million a year in direct deposit fraud. And then it says a big number, but very small fraction of the $1.6 trillion the agency pays out in the benefits annually. So, and this is direct deposit frauds. And this is probably one of the more common ways that it would happen. Let's say someone passes away and you do not report that they passed away. And there are different reporting outlets. So I think the mortuary can actually report this. The hospital could report this. So there's different people who can report. But let's just say you're in a situation, you've heard these crazy stories where grandma's in the basement and they are still collecting the Social Security. So grandma passes away, she's in the basement, and they're still collecting the Social Security money. I'm just giving you an example. I'm not saying that happens on a regular basis, but that would be direct deposit fraud, where that money is coming in, but you're taking it knowing that this person is no longer alive. Or let's say you have a joint account and your spouse passes away and you don't report it, or you could report it, but they give you a couple of extra checks anyway, just because they from the time that you reported and the time that they actually sent out a check, you're getting these extra checks. And usually the Social Security Administration will be able to figure that out, and then they will claw that money back from you. But $100 million. So if we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, which we've been talking a little bit about, I've been kind of teasing this when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse. What are the numbers? What are we actually seeing? So this could be one of the numbers, $100 million. That's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change much because we have $1.6 trillion going through Social Security every year. And so when we're looking for waste, fraud, and abuse, this is probably the only real area that they're going to be able to find waste, fraud, and abuse. And I would think that this isn't a hard fix. I mean, we're looking at a situation, like I said, the reporting, that information, the communication between the Social Security Administration and the people who are receiving benefits. If they pass away, that information needs to come out really fast. That way they can put a stop to those checks. I actually think the banks actually will stop it as well. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I did talk about this waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to see the numbers. What are we looking at now? Now, this information that we're receiving. This is older information. So I don't know. We still don't know what Doge is uncovered, because this is information that it's dated, okay, because they have to go through the whole year. So we're talking about 2024. That's what they're looking at there, $100 million a year in direct deposit fraud. So you have to have some history. You can't just say, well, in 2025 we had 100 million, because we're not done with 2025 yet. So we know right now that Doge said there's waste, fraud, and abuse. Show us the numbers. That's all I'm asking. And so show us the receipts when it comes to Social Security. How much waste, fraud, and abuse do you see? And then we can move on from there. I'm thinking that there's not going to be much that they find. And that's the reason why it's all hush hush. Because you remember when they were talking about Social Security, we have people 150 years old receiving Social Security benefits, and then they had to back up from that because they weren't receiving Social Security benefits. No one at 150 years old was receiving Social Security benefits. So they backed away from that. And they say, well, on the books, we have people that are 150 years old. And then we found out the way that system works, the Cobalt system or whatever they're using, it would automatically default to 150 years old. So that's the reason why we were seeing that. And so it's interesting when you start getting these people out there, and Doge coming out and saying, well, yes, this is what's going on and this is what's going on. And then when you call them on it, then they start backing away from it. So I'd be interested to see how much waste, fraud, and abuse are they finding in the Social Security Administration. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's going to be that much. I think this is just one of those things where they wanted to get in there. They wanted access to the Social Security books. And so they said, oh, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's why we need to go in. But there's not much waste, fraud, and abuse. That's why we're not hearing about it. If there was waste, fraud, and abuse, a lot of it, we would be hearing about it every day. But that's not the case. And so I want to know what you guys think about this. So let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.